It's a Tuesday, which means it's update day for Arc Raiders. Today we're going to be taking a look at what was introduced with update 1.27 for the game and what you should know of in regards to the weekly update here on deck. Drop your thoughts as we go along, drop a like if you enjoy the video, and make sure to subscribe to stay up to date with all things Arc Raiders and even more FPS content as we gear up for the months ahead. I'd love to have you in the community, but for now, let's get into it. So in regards to the update itself, a lot of what we'll see with this is back-end changes, things that are minor adjustments to bug fixes, some things that are actually balancing tuning and patches for exploits, and then a little bit of content. The only thing that we saw in terms of content was that shop update that we see on a weekly basis, this introducing the Corsaro set along with the Mutton Chop's facial hair. Now the Corsaro set is a cool little like hybrid between cyberpunk and pirate themes. You end up having that pirate hat, you end up having the face mask that's a bit more techno, you end up having that robotic peg leg, the best of your seafaring adventures mixed with that post-apocalyptic cybernetic world. This coming along with a couple of different colors, options to end up toggling the cape, gun holster, hat, jacket, radio box, and shoulder pad, all coming along for 1,600 Raider tokens as a set. Individually, you can end up buying those items separately, but you end up getting a steep discount here based off the entire set. Then the Mutton Chops come along with 5 different colors here, but a new facial hair cosmetic for you to be able to rock, that being 500 Raider tokens. But that in terms of like front-facing content is all that you'll end up seeing in relation to new additions. The other stuff comes down to back-end changes and of course adjustments to the gameplay. So let's start out with the lead off here, and what is the most important out of this update and the patch notes we've seen so far is a trigger nade adjustment. Now this is not necessarily building off of, but closing off an exploit with what we saw with the Riventides update last week. The update was that you could no longer throw a new grenade at the same time as triggering a previously thrown one, that you'd have to wait for that animation to complete before throwing another trigger nade, which was intended to lessen that trigger nade spam. However, this bug that was introduced in the past week was something that allowed players to get around that, and you'd have that instant detonation once again. So this one may be controversial depending on your take of the trigger nade in general, plus what type of player you are. PvP heavy, PvPvE, and a mixture there, or just PvE. Like those variables will likely change your outlook on this adjustment entirely for you, but it appears that this is one final stab at that trigger nade, trying to, again, keep it at their intended balance rather than trying to find a workaround here at this, reeling in some of what may have gotten out of hand to them this past week. But anyways, the trigger nade was once again patched, adjusted, however you want to look at it. As for Arc, we saw fixed for the turbine attacks, those being visible from far away now. The strange thing was that if you ended up having some situations fighting the turbine, you might not have ended up seeing those lightning strikes coming from afar, which obviously if it's targeted towards you or in the general direction could be detrimental. So being able to see those now visually, definitely nice. Players can now drop their carryable and fight off ticks when they're attacked while carrying something so that you don't just have a ton of health eaten away while you're helpless to that. They adjusted visibility on proximity mines deployed from the turbine, which is definitely nice. Something that, depending on where the turbine landed, some of those mines may have deployed in an area that wasn't so visible. And they also improved the quality of the turbine landing behavior to mitigate instances of poor landing, such as on treetops, which seems like it may be a rarer of an instance, but is nice to see that that's fixed out at least. Progression we saw fixed to the information in the late departure window so it accurately displays the catch-up rewards, meaning that if you end up having those catch-up skill points available, that will now be accurately conveyed to you in that expedition. The audio, they fixed an issue that caused game sounds to be quieted by the turbine's sound effects. They increased the distance from which the turbine can be heard. They fixed an issue where vegetation-heavy areas on Riventides lacked audio feedback when moving or shooting, and they fixed an audio and animation issue that would occur when trying to very quickly use items. Riventides and Stellamontis had a few updates to them, where Riventides, they fixed the Field Depot POI, not counting for the off-the-radar quest. They fixed several floating and buried fruit baskets, and they fixed the spot where players could fall through the floor. Obviously, you don't want that to happen. You don't want to fall through the map and lose all your stuff for something that is completely out of your control. Stellamontis, they fixed a missing collision on a wall that would allow Arc and players to shoot through it. And then finally, cosmetics, they updated the Howdy emote so that it's now available while sprinting, and the Rachetta outfit colors are now more accurate to their display. So that was the update that we had here as of this week's update. Absolutely a much smaller update compared to, say, last week's Riventides content update, but this is to be expected at this point. Embark has actually set a relatively routine standard here for the update and the content cadence over the past 5 months since we've rounded into 2026. Larger updates are at the back end end of the month. That you'll end up seeing the more important things in, though there is a little bit more we can probably expect to see before the update itself later this month. But the way timing works out, at least May actually has a couple of things where this week might be a little bit slower in terms of the pace or importance of updates, but next week we end up having the reset with the Expedition. Then the week after that, you're going to start to see things gear up for the May content update the week following. So this one is maybe one of our only like lull weeks here we can talk about perhaps. But as for what's still to come, it seems like we have a decently sized balancing pass of some kind coming relatively soon. The patch notes for this update did actually open up with the statement of "Thank you for your constructive feedback following Riven Tides' release. We're already exploring balancing adjustments to improve upon the changes introduced with Riven Tides. We want to make sure we get this right. When we're ready, you'll get all the details. In the meantime, enjoy Riven Tides and get those merits." So the key and explicit mention of already exploring balancing adjustments and when we're ready, you'll get all the details, that kind of sounds like we're going to see bigger balancing of some kind. Now, what that balancing is in question, we don't quite know just yet. I would imagine it's a handful of adjustments to refine what Riven Tides brought to the table, granted that they said it was based off of Riven Tides' constructive feedback. So perhaps adjustments to the changes to the durability on weapons, perhaps weapon balancing in particular, perhaps augment adjustments like they did mention that they were going to have, and so on. The possibilities are nearly endless for what we can think up in our minds of like, oh, maybe they'll change this, maybe they'll adjust that, maybe here and there will be swapped or something. But until we know specifically their plans, it's all purely speculation, and it doesn't really do us much good to dive too far into that because we just don't know exactly where we're looking. But beyond that, what else is in the future? We're likely going to discuss this a little more at length, maybe later this week, maybe over the weekend sometime, but I'd keep an eye out for next week for sure if I'm taking an educated guess. Like, yes, as we mentioned, we do have that actual expedition, the reset happening as of next Monday, but as of next week, it's kind of a strangely open period for what we see in regards to Arc Raiders. What next week's weekly update holds, probably again something smaller, but the bigger thing to me that I think is quite possible is a new roadmap. While purely speculation and it's nothing more than an educated guess, I'd assume there's a chance we see that roadmap sometime next week. Riven Tides is on its way out of that spotlight. We'll have the marketing for the May content update the week leading up to that update, so with that said, next week is the only real time that's like nothing's really planned, it seems like, from what we know with Arc Raiders. Tucked right in between this week and next, where again that spotlight is kind of moving away from Riven Tides, but not quite to that next thing we're working out just yet. Personally, I think that they give this week to Riven Tides to breathe a bit more, but next week, again, prime real estate where we could see those future plans revealed as a whole. Now, the only thing that I think kind of combats this is that the last roadmap we saw actually only happened 4 days before the Headwinds update, so it's quite possible they drop this roadmap like right before the update. But at the same time, as we've mentioned, Embark's actually done a pretty good job of having a relatively structured and scheduled month-over-month calendar since the turn of the year. So it wouldn't surprise me if we do start to see some sort of teases and previews here next week, but also, again, it's just speculation, so take it with a grain of salt. Maybe keep an eye out, and of course, we'll keep you updated if anything happens, but that is the update as of today and what we have to look out for in the immediate future for Arc Raiders. But that said, let me know your thoughts down below. What do you guys think of this update? Do you like the trigger nade adjustment? Once again, do you like some of the adjustments to the turbines? Were you hoping for a little bit more? Let me know your thoughts down below. But if you guys enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor, drop a like on it. Of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to miss a single thing regarding all things Arc Raiders and even more FPS content I'd love to have in the community. But for now, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.